Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, and I'm back, and I'm also from The Next Reel, still.
Still are.
I don't know why you made me leave for the last, 30 weeks.
You were off digging up parts in the deserts of Afghanistan, right?
Oh, I am, but I brought sunscreen.
Good. Well, we are, of course, talking about Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. And we have some guests today with us, Pete.
I'm very excited about this.
We have Scott Corelli and Nick Jimenez from the Cornetto Minute. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
This is very exciting. First of all, because you're doing a show on one of my very favorite movies, and I absolutely love what you guys are doing over there. Hot Fuzz.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it's great. We love talking about Edgar Wright's films. It's been a lot of fun. We did all of Shaun of the Dead last year, and that was great. And Hot Fuzz is turning out to be more of the same.
Yeah, really fun for very different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, Edgar Wright, when you're watching his stuff, it's just already so rich, from shot to shot, from scene to scene. So I can only imagine how much fun it is going through it minute by minute and just kind of analyzing all the fun little details that you're catching.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And an almost Marvel connection with Ant-Man.
That's right.
That would have been a very interesting. I think that Peyton's doing a great job with the Ant-Man films, but I
do too,
in the back of my mind go, what would Edgar have done?
Oh, sure. It's a credit to Scott that, he can be on one hand such a student and fan of Edgar Wright's work, and on the other, from a friend, speaking as a friend, Ant-Man might be his favorite MCU franchise currently.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
He loves both of them.
Yeah. But the thing that's really interesting, I think, about Edgar Wright and the Marvel connection is that, he was he was like the first two. They announced two films when they said that Marvel was going to make movies. They announced Jon Favreau's Iron Man, and they announced Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. And it took them a really long time to make the Ant-Man one, and it wasn't with Edgar Wright, but he was the one of the two filmmakers they originally announced at that San Diego Comic-Con panel in 2006.
I had totally forgotten that. I cannot believe they were shuttling his name around for that long before they finally came to differences. That's fantastic.
Oh, yes,
I also can't believe that Iron Man and Ant-Man were the two that they were talking about that long ago. What business did Ant-Man have that far into the past? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was just a product of Edgar Wright being invited into the playpen.
Yeah.
And
that was the one he wanted.
His imagination and
Yeah.
Joe Cornish's imagination were like, this is it. This is the one that can make the most interesting kinetic movie.
Yeah.
And I remember being a high school nerd in journalism class with my tab open to slashfilm.com and reading about Edgar Wright's Ant-Man and Jon Favreau's Iron Man. I'm like,
Right? And then when we finally got that, Edgar shot that little sizzle basically of that little action scene, which was such a thrill to watch. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. I can see where he's going with it. And then it never happened.
Yeah. Yeah. But we still got a good movie out of it.
We got two great movies. I really enjoy the Ant-Man films.
True.
And I think Paul Rudd has been wonderfully cast. And he's a great addition to this universe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
sure, we're just now seeing the tip of the iceberg.
I know.
Scott Lang.
Right. I can't wait to see what's going to go on with him in the future.
It's true.
But I guess we should, before we really go down that road, which is a long road and full of all sorts of great conversations, we should look at what we're talking about today on Iron Man. We're looking at minute 56. And this minute starts with terrorists plucking Mark I parts out of the sand. And it ends with Tony and Dummy working away on a foot for Mark II. Starting off back in the Kunar province, this is the Olancha Sand Dunes again, just south of Lone Pine, California. And we are looking at a big sandstorm as these 10-ring terrorists are pulling parts out.
This is just one massive hero shot and hero power pose after another. this sequence, right? It starts with they're digging, and we get that long pullback, and then the terrorist with who's finds the helmet, and he does this very artificially strange, like he stands up with his hand fully extended to his side, holding the mask way up in the air, like he has just found the Grail Cup, right? Like this is the massive Grail, and then it immediately cuts to another hero shot, right? As we have Terrorist Prime turning around to showcase his scarred face and open wound, just one after another of these kinds of shots. It's very dramatic, these terrorists.
Johnny Favs knows what the people want.
Yeah, he does.
Well, I was going to say, and I remember reading so much about his coverage on Ain't It Cool and Slash Film, and that the film was going to be kind of powered by Favreau's love of the Star Wars trilogy and the Indiana Jones adventures. And this scene is just such a love letter to like the stormtroopers searching for the droids on Tatooine,
right.
Like the Nazis being like one step behind Indiana on an adventure, and
or them digging for the entrance to the canyon cave, like in Raiders.
Definitely.
Yeah, the Well of Souls. That's it. Yeah.
And the shot of like I always think of him as the captain from Star Trek. The guy, like he turns around like, oh, like, and because in the movie he's like, that's the audience being like, oh, he's still alive. It's
exactly.
It's very, very Spielberg Lucas.
Yeah, it is. And you're right. Jon Favreau really knows how to sell it. And even though it is probably over the top, the way the man picks the mask up out of the sand and holds it at just the right angle to allow one, the sand to pour out, and two, for the reveal to come when it's nice and high that it's the Mark I mask. It is so invigorating. It's thrilling to see it done so well.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a movie mood.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to do a recut of this scene now with any John Williams score.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that would play well.
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership that could happen. Then I'd be really happy. John Favreau and John Williams.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could happen. He's doing The Mandalorian.
Oh, that's right.
Can be a lot of deserts on that show.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be interesting to see that play out. Ramin Djawadi I think he's great, and I think he delivers some music here that works for the scenes, but still, I wouldn't say that it's John Williams level. It still is entertaining. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the music in the film.
I would say it's up there with the scores in Phase One. I find this is just a very seminal movie to me, and I can say that a lot more confidently now that it's 10 years old, and not like 2 or 3 years old. But I remember even watching this for the first time, being like, "Oh, this is like a really This is I'm gonna be watching this a lot."
Yeah.
Everything changes now.
Yeah, and so these big movie moments, like he's raising the helmet out of the sand, he turns and his face is burned. Like I remember these moments the same way that you remember moments of Star Wars very vividly.
Oh yeah. Not only is it burnt, but it's also got a lot of sand in it, which is that thing is going to get infected. It's not good.
And that could very well be the literal mask that Obadiah ends up wearing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's funny looking at Raza's face as we see him do that fantastically dramatic turn. The things that run through my mind are, because one, it's the reveal that he is still alive. He didn't die after Tony shot at him with the little missile, and kind of an explosion went off at the side of his head, and then there was a roof collapse on top of him. One, he didn't sustain nearly as much damage as I thought he should have. And two,
right.
It horrifies me that he's like got those glasses like strapped right on top of his wound and just doesn't seem to mind at all, which I guess tells you how tough of a bad guy he is.
Mm-hmm. He also has the best glasses, right? They only cover his eye and no other headgear. Everybody else is wearing the full like ski mask action, and you can tell they're all wee baby men compared to his massive masculinity.
Yeah.
Well, this scene wasn't supposed to be. I mean, it's not like they planned for windstorms. It was a nice day when they started kind of planning this whole thing up. Then all of a sudden it turned into this huge windstorm, and they were concerned about what they were going to do. And all the crew like whipped out these cool glasses like that to kind of deal with the sand. Favreau was like, well, let's just put them in these instead of canceling and coming back another day.
Yeah.
And so they did, and they shot it. And I think it looks so much cooler this way.
Yeah. These glasses are cool. They're not cool, but like in the context of what's happening, they're cool. Like somebody was just walking down the street wearing these, you'd be like, what a dork. But but in the context of like out in the desert, like they're kind of cool. They look like they serve like a very specific desert going purpose of like, we have to protect you from the sun, but also from the sand like blowing through the air. So they're like these weird combination, like goggle sunglasses that are just they're cool.
Everything's relative. And those glasses would, I think, by comparison, be incredibly cool walking down the streets of LA if you see somebody next to him wearing a full ski goggle setup. Like, it's just, context is everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, in the context of him being in an action movie, he looks great.
They do. Yeah.
They do have that sort of look. In the script, it says Raza, his terrible scars still raw from Iron Man's flamethrower. He swats flies from his wound.
Ugh.
Just reading that, like, that made it even worse when I read that. I'm like, oh, I'm glad it was a windy day, so they didn't have to have flies all over his head, because that would have been that much worse, I think.
Yikes. But yeah, I mean, speaking of all the Star Wars connections that we're making, after Raza's looking at this mask, he like picks it up, which, by the way, that thing would be so hot to touch. I mean, it would
right.
Buried in desert sand.
Oh, in the beaming sun. I mean, that thing, you would not be able to touch that.
Well, granted, to that end, it's actually winter time here. At least, I mean, it has been. There was snow earlier in the scene outside of the cave.
Oh,
we saw a very chilly night there. So it's a cold desert.
Oh, okay.
Cold desert day.
So maybe it would be cold to the touch then. Too cold. It'll like don't lick the mask. Your tongue will get stuck to it. But when he's doing this sort of stare down with the mask, which I like because the eye slants and the mask sort of match the shape of his goggles,
right?
Which is kind of weird. But then they do this thing that I don't think I've ever noticed. I mean, I've seen this movie probably 50 times, and I've never noticed that they do a full on wipe. Into the next scene, which is, again, it's just Johnny Fab's trying to call upon those Star Wars feels, and it works.
And he wipes into this scene earlier, like we see Tony in his lab in a previous minute. He's working in his lab, and it wipes the opposite direction into this desert scene, and then it wipes out of it. And so far, I think it may be the only wipe that we've seen in the film. I can't remember now. I'll have to go back and listen to all the minutes that we've discussed so far.
That's so interesting.
But I think this was the first set of wipes, so it is pretty interesting that he opted to go that route.
Yeah,
you can totally hear that Tatooine theme, right? There's the flute, and we're changing. He's just discovered that Aunt Beru is crisp, and we're going back to the stormtroopers. Like, yeah, this is just it. Like, that's it. He absolutely. I think you just nailed why I feel such an affinity to this sequence in this film, because it really is of the genetic family of Episode 4.
Yeah,
right. I think Star Wars has always filmed their desert stuff over in North Africa. I don't think, other than Jabba's palace, which I know some of that was filmed down in the deserts in southern Arizona and southern California. I don't think they've ever filmed in this spot, which seems odd because it's a prime desert spot that's a lot closer for them.
Yeah.
Although I guess mostly they're filming in London, so that's obviously closer than.
Oh yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah, that's true.
That's probably why I answered my own question.
As long as you're building a desert like village too, that you're really intending to just leave standing in the middle of the desert, you've got to go someplace where they don't care about that stuff, right?
Yeah, right. Before we get into the scene we're dissolving into, a few notes. I thought it was interesting. The guy who is digging out the Mark I mask, as we're watching him dig through the sand to pull it out, if you look closely, you see that he's actually wearing a watch, and it's actually a watch with the New York Giants logo on it. And it made me wonder if because, people in foreign countries often are wearing weird American things that you're like, wow, that's an odd thing to be wearing, but okay. So is he happens to be wearing a watch that is a New York Giants watch, or is this just the watch of the actor who was digging in the sand and didn't take it off, and it just ended up being in the shot?
Well, Favreau is from New York. Maybe it is like a little Easter egg for him.
Yeah, it could be. It very well could be. We're certainly going to have one of those in one of our later minutes.
Or it is just an example of like discarded pieces of Americana ending up like on this guy's wrist.
That's what it feels like. Like, he opens his jacket and he's probably wearing a t-shirt with some sort of like English weird innuendo or profanity. Yeah. That he has no idea what it means.
That kind of bleeds into like what Iron Man 3 is about.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, right. The whole thing.
Which is funny because it ties into this whole idea of these 10 Rings terrorists. Because initially the plan was to kind of have the Mandarin before they got into villain swapping, trying to find the right villain for the film. And so that would have been an interesting element here.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like an overarching Sauron type force.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. My last note that I had with this scene is so far I've been having the translator community on Reddit do translations for me in the various minutes to try figuring out what language they're speaking and what they're actually saying. For this minute, I sent it in because so far they've been speaking Urdu and Arabic, and there's been a couple lines of Hungarian. And I think there was some maybe Farsi or Dari, and none of those. Everybody was just like, no, it's not any of these languages. It's not Pashto. And somebody's like, they thought it might have been Mongolian. They said it's definitely not Mongolian. It's not Manchu. They went through the whole range of things and nobody could pinpoint what language it was. People generally seemed to think that it was probably just gibberish. And I'm like, these guys have been very good about not providing gibberish in any of these languages so far. It's all been real languages. So I doubt it's gibberish at this point, but nobody could pinpoint it. So I feel a little disappointed by the Reddit translation community who couldn't figure this one out for me.
Oh.
Maybe it's maybe they're speaking some kind of created language, like I don't like the way that the minions kind of speak, like in an all speak. Maybe because these guys are their own country, almost their own organization. They speak in this sort of 10 Ringsian slang.
And they are minions. They are minions.
They are minions.
Yes. So I've been watching a lot of like Lord of the Rings stuff, so I'm like, oh, maybe it's all language. Maybe it's all.
Yeah.
I love that. The only clue that I have is in the script after Raza is looking at the helmet. He tells his man, he says, keep looking. I want all of it. So
checks out.
That probably makes sense. But alas, we just don't know what language it is. So anyway, as you pointed out, we do have this fantastic wipe. And now we are in Tony's workshop as Tony is working away on this part of the Mark II. And it's a really great moment because this whole latter part of this minute is one long shot. It's a great shot.
Mm-hmm.
It is. We get the first 24 seconds of it in this sequence where we just orbit his work and listen to him sort of talking to himself. I love the whole internal kind of head dialogue that we get with Tony as he's just talking through things and using dummy as a foil for his work. That he's just such a chatterbox, but he's also, they're also giving us such a tour of the fantastical sort of wonders that are about to be hidden by the shell of the suit that are in this leg. And I've just, the more of this kind of workshop stuff for me, the better. It's just, I'm mesmerized by all the little gears and widgets and things that are moving and sliding around. I just get so excited about this stuff.
Oh, and I think that's the secret sauce of Johnny Faz, because as soon as he was gone, Iron Man 2 has its fair share of issues for sure. But one of the things that Johnny Favs, I think, really brought to the table when he was directing these were the practical effects that went away when he left.
Yeah.
Cause everything with Iron Man, everything involving Tony went to CG. And I think part of that has to do with Robert Downey Jr. getting older and wanting to work less for a bigger paycheck. And so, he does a lot of green screen, like green suit work and motion capture and stuff like that. Once, he was teamed up with a director who allowed him to do that. But I do miss this practical thing. Cause I mean, this whole, single shot thing. I mean, it was really just Favreau just kind of showing off those practical effects that his puppeteering team and special effects team worked so hard to put together to say that, like, I mean, look at this thing, like all of the parts move in this, like this is a real working thing, even if it isn't a actual working thing, Right. That's really the secret sauce of I think this movie and the phase one films in particular, where that sort of grounded realism of like, you know, that grounded in practical effects and things like that, that sort of, I think, started to go out the window with the Chitauri in Avengers.
Yeah. You think? No, I totally agree. And that was one of the things we talked about, I think, in our very first episode. That's like, you've got to earn your wizards, and you earn your wizards through stuff like this. Like, I don't think we generally appreciate how much of the practical stuff that makes this world believable we owe to this movie. Right, for the remaining 20 movies, right? This movie carries a lot of water for our ability to believe that this world exists.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something really physical and seeing Robert Downey Jr. working with these actual parts, and I think it works so well in context of our believability in the fact that this is a guy who's basically building this superhero outfit. We're believing it because we're seeing him actually working on these moving parts that are actually in front of him. But also in context of who Tony Stark is, and this a guy who's this super genius who is able to kind of put these things together, and he's doing it all by himself with the help of his two idiot robots. That you know, it's amazing that he's so sharp and he's putting such amazing things together. So I think it really works in context of us believing that this stuff is really there, and also just believing that this is a guy who can do it. I think it's just a fantastic way to kind of bring us through this process of the creation of these suits and making Iron Man who he is.
And it allows so much. It lays so much groundwork in not just the story and the world of the MCU, but also to Tony's character. And I think this is the secret sauce as to why he is still now, he has become kind of the mascot to the MCU, and or the character that the culture thinks of really the most when they think of the MCU. They think of Tony Stark, they think of Iron Man, and it's because I think more so than any character in the MCU, we really got to see this character crack out of the egg and learn how to walk and learn how to use his rocket arm and his deflector boots and so when he lands in front of that tank in a few minutes, like, we're there with him. And
right,
it's like, oh, like I'm with this guy, and it kind of allows him to say things like, "I'm a billionaire, genius, playboy, philanthropist," without him sounding like a total jerk.
Right.
Like the kind of like, oh, this guy, because like, well, no, this dude fought his way out of a cave, and I saw it. I was there for him. I was there with him every step of the way, and it's such a quaint, quiet kind of blockbuster, but in a really cool way, because it really refuses to pull away from this dude, this character.
He's working here with Dummy. Dummy is one of his two robots, and we've seen Dummy before. The other one is You, and we haven't seen You pop up yet, but we'll see You soon enough. And I had a question because this is a fantastic workshop that Tony has. He's always doing a lot of work down here. He is working right now on this desk that is in the exact spot where he was working on his car, or it's like right next to where his car is. But there's so much stuff around here, and space wise, I was just trying to figure out actually with one of our previous guests, how is he like moving things around and handling all of this stuff? Is it just his two robots? Does he have any assistants? We've never seen any assistants in his house except for Pepper. And it just makes me wonder, like, who's helping him with all of this? Because it makes you think that it's just him and possibly these two little robot assistants that are doing everything.
I just have this image of everything being on like rails, and like the robots just everything slides around on like tracks that you can't see,
Well, they do a lot to keep Tony from being like pampered. It's just little things like making him a garage rat.
Yeah.
It sort of blue collars him up a little bit to where like folks in Indiana or Texas can be like, yeah, this guy, he's in a garage. He's not some like snooty Malibu, like shake drinking, which he is. But just by doing that, or like, he doesn't have a lot of like, he doesn't have an Alfred. He has like,
he had one. They made Jarvis an app.
That's
exactly. Because they knew, they're like, no, we'll lose people. He'll be too much like Bruce Wayne if he's got like people. He's got like Pepper, he's got Happy, and he has these two robots.
He does. And even though he has Jarvis, like the fact that they made the robots dumb, double down on the fact that this ain't no Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, like he's rolling his eyes like, oh, these guys that keep messing up, you know, and it's like things like that keep him from he keeps him grounded for us.
Yeah. And there's also this interesting element about his development as a character through this series. You sort of get the sense that Tony, he really likes to, when he has a new idea, he likes to roll up his sleeves and get to work on it himself. Like he likes to touch it and plan it and solder it himself. Mm-hmm. And then, later on, as he starts to upgrade these things, he already has sort of the baseline that he built from scratch. And then going forward, he like creates things to automate the process of upgrading it, because he only wants to do it the one time and then he gets bored. Right? Because he's like, well, I already did this. I'm just improving on it. So now I'll automate it. And that's why I think we go from him struggling to build one suit in this movie to having like 70 suits by Iron Man 3. And it's because he's just created an automated system. And we even see it later in this movie. He creates an automated system for the Mach 3, where he just sort of sets it to create the thing and then he bails and goes to a party. And it's like, yeah, no, this thing will be 3D printed and whatever it is. But, he's just like, all right, I'll just set that and forget it and I'll be back later to try it out.
Yeah. When you think about where he is at in Infinity War, by the time he's putting on the suit, it's like
he's building other people's suits.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't switch off.
Yeah.
Well, and we see a hint of that. There is a deleted scene that happens. It feels like it would be wedged right between the scene in the sand with Raza and this scene that we're watching. It's where he really kind of locks down his final ideas and starts machining the parts.
Yeah.
It's an interesting little bit. It's not the most exciting. I can see why they probably cut it, but it speaks, I think, exactly to that automated world that Tony is living in, because he says, great, let's start machining, or shall we start machining the parts? That's what he says. And all of Jarvis like turns all the lights on behind him, and you hear all the machines start whirring up, and you see the things start cutting the metal and everything.
Which is so cool. It's so cool.
Very already there.
Especially because, again, it has weight. Like everything in that sequence in particular has weight and just like feeling and electricity. And it is nothing like the screens that he's sliding around and the like holograms that he's looking at and exploding, which is all very cool. And it shows just how much he's into the design. But once you get into like the CNC milling stuff, that again is just like, oh, that suit, that magical suit that lets this man fly like a bird, that's made of real stuff that I can relate to. It connects me again to this universe. It's just great.
Absolutely.
I don't have anything else for this minute. Do you guys have anything else?
No,
just eager to keep going.
Yeah.
It's a real nail biter.
Got some good minutes here. All right, guys. Scott and Nick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Where can people find you and learn more about the shows you're working on?
Well, right now we're on season 2 of the Cornetto Minute, where we're covering Hot Fuzz 1 minute at a time. So you should probably check that out. We'll probably be, by the time this airs, we'll probably be at the tail end of that movie, probably in the middle of the shootout, the big action sequence at the end of the movie. So perfect time to sort of sample an episode if that's what you want to do. But go check that out, and we'll have other things to plug throughout the week, so we'll just leave it at the Cornetto Minute. Go check that out.
You guys have no shortage of goodies to talk about.
All right, everybody. Well, that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at patreon.com/thenextreel. Until next time, true believers.